At one point in the mid-1990s, I was in Boston, Massachusetts, and one night I stopped by a bar for a drink. When I walked in, I noticed two things that would make any Englishman alive in the 1960s to the late 1990s pause to consider. There were a lot of Irish tricolour flags. Well, that was to be expected in Boston. I knew the history of that city. As I leaned on the bar preparing to order a beer, I noticed a collecting tin in the corner. It said on it, "Norade." I left shortly afterwards, and you will soon realize why when we discuss Norade. For me, it was my second brush in life with the IRA. There is an aspect of the Troubles, as the 30-year conflict in Northern Ireland between 1969 and 1998 is known, that often is ignored today: weapons smuggling. The media has mostly been focused quite rightly on the carnage wrought by terrorist attacks in the province and also in mainland Britain and elsewhere, as organizations like the IRA conducted its long campaign against the British. But the bombings and shootings were only possible because of a sophisticated weapons smuggling operation that enabled the IRA to keep up its stocks of weapons, ammunition, and explosives. From the early 1970s, a lot of weapons started to come from a nation seemingly far removed from the strife and politics of Ulster, and that nation was Libya under its dictator Colonel Gaddafi.
Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, just 32 years old, the ruler of oil-rich Libya. Gaddafi came to power just 4 years ago when he deposed the aging King Idris. Today at Tripoli airport, he welcomes his friend President P.I.R.A of Somalia. Both are fanatics, but Gaddafi's coup was bloodless. He has no taste for violence at home. He prefers to export the bloody libation of fanaticism. A street in Belfast, another bomb. Innocent victims scarred for the rest of their lives. The money that paid for it probably came from Libya.
The IRA had previously received shipments of arms from sympathizers in North America. Previous to this, the IRA had relied on World War II-era weapons from older campaigns or raiding British military installations to steal firearms. In its first international arms smuggling operation of the Troubles in 1969, the IRA had purchased from sources in the US 70 small arms, including M1 carbines, M3 grease guns, a few pistols, and 60,000 rounds of ammunition. But it was a mere drop in the ocean compared to what the IRA would successfully smuggle into Ireland in the following decades. By 1972, the IRA had large quantities of modern firearms, in particular the Armalite AR-18 rifle, made in the US and bought by the IRA there and smuggled to Ireland. The AR-18 was very useful for the kind of urban fighting the IRA was involved with, and it was also easy to conceal due to its small size and folding stock. The main IRA gun runner in the US was a man called George Harrison, no, not the Beatle, but an old IRA member from the late 1930s. Harrison had connections to an Italian-American weapons dealer called George DeMio, who was himself connected with the Mafia. Some of the support in the US was focused on an organization called Norade, which had been created in 1969 at the start of the Troubles, and it tapped into Irish Republican feeling amongst large amounts of Irish-descended people in cities like Boston, New York, and Chicago, whose ancestors had emigrated to the US in the 19th century to escape harsh British rule in Ireland. An IRA officer called Joe Cahill, a former IRA chief of staff, acted as a link between Norade and George Harrison and his gun-running network. In the 1970s, Harrison spent about $1 million of IRA money purchasing 2,500 weapons. Incredibly, this weaponry was smuggled in caches to Belfast in Northern Ireland via the famous British ocean liner, the Queen Elizabeth II. sympathetic Irish crewmen hiding the weapons aboard the ship, which sailed from New York to Southampton in England. The weapons were then smuggled into Northern Ireland in cars across the Irish Sea on ferries in small batches. This route was eventually closed down by the FBI in the early 1980s. In the meantime, the IRA set up another route to get arms. In the late 1970s, IRA soldier Gabriel McGahey was sent to the US to procure more rifles, specifically AR-15s, plus some Heckler & Koch G3 rifles, all paid for by sympathizers within the United States. In 1977, a quantity of M60 machine guns were actually smuggled into Northern Ireland after they had been stolen from a US National Guard armory. The problem was that the US Department of Justice and the FBI were cracking down hard on IRA buying and smuggling of weapons from America, and the IRA had to look elsewhere for an easier route. This led Joe Cahill to Colonel Gaddafi. In the US, George DeMeo was arrested, and he cooperated with the government to get a reduced jail sentence, giving them details of George Harrison's IRA network in the US. McGahey was arrested trying to purchase surface-to-air missiles and was given 7 years in prison. In September 1984, the FBI warned the Irish government of a major IRA arms vessel heading their way, resulting in the ship, the Marita Anne, being intercepted by the Irish Navy off County Kerry, and the arrest of the 5-man crew and the seizure of 7 tons of military equipment. The weapons allegedly donated by the South Boston Winter Hill gang of the Irish Mob, an organization that included gangster James Whitey Bulger. In Libya, Colonel Gaddafi had a policy of arming various terrorist groups around the world, particularly those he thought in opposition to US interests in the Middle East. The first shipment of arms from Libya to the IRA had actually occurred in 1972-73. Following Joe Cahill holding secret meetings with Gaddafi in Tripoli. In March 1973, the Irish Navy gained intelligence that a ship called the Claudia was headed for Ireland from Libya carrying arms. She was seized off County Waterford and found to contain nearly 500 small arms, some anti-tank mines and explosives. Cahill was arrested aboard her. However, it has been suggested that 3 other shipments of arms from Libya had got through safely, including stocks of RPG-7 rocket-propelled grenades that began to figure in IRA attacks on British troops and in particular on helicopters. Gaddafi also gave the IRA a huge influx of capital.
Each year, the IRA collects a check for $2 million from one of Gaddafi's money managers in Tripoli. Round the globe, dozens of scenes like this are being enacted for the benefit of Gaddafi's crusade.
However, Gaddafi suddenly broke off contact with the IRA in 1976. He re-established contact in 1981, apparently impressed the Irish hunger strike by IRA prisoners in British jails. Gaddafi sent further large weapons shipments. It was reportedly enough to fully equip the equivalent of 2 infantry battalions. Among the stuff sent were 18 Dushka heavy machine guns, the famous Soviet weapon. Thanks to the RAF Regiment Heritage Center for letting me have a close look at one of these. Check out how to visit this wonderful museum in the description box. Over 1,000 AK-type rifles, hundreds of handguns, RPGs, flamethrowers, SA-7 surface-to-air missiles, and a huge quantity of Semtex plastic explosive. In a previous video, I discussed my own experience of an IRA car bombing in my hometown in 1989. The Semtex used in that explosion came from Libya. Do check out my video, link in the end screen. Gaddafi was apparently